corporations are using inflation as an excuse to raise prices and make fatter profits, and it's making the problem worse.
I don't think you understand how inflation works.
Consumer prices are going up, but corporate profits are rising even faster.
So let's get this straight. You lock down a whole bunch of stuff in the economy, drive a lot of small businesses out of business, most of which aren't coming back, and the big corporations that remain make more in profits. And this is a surprise. Why?
Whether it's foreign exchange inflation or raw and packing material inflation, we have found ways over time to recover that in our margin line.
So inflation is happening, and they've been able to recover from it. Would that we all could. But that's how inflation has always worked. Government creates a bunch of money, banks and the corporations they invest in get to use the new money first before the effects of inflation hit, and the rest of us get hit with higher prices. This is nothing new. Any bets who he's going to leave out of the equation?
Former U.S. Labor Secretary Robert Reich.
Yeah, don't need to listen any further on that one. Anyone who uses that phrase just shows that they're so ignorant they can't cite a real economist.
So in other words, because there's now just relentless talk of inflation.
Talk of inflation? Do you not do your own grocery shopping or anything, Kolinsky?
So in other words, even for goods that are not experiencing the inflation, they're raising the prices and then turning around and saying, it's inflation.
Oh, for the love of... Inflation is an economy-wide phenomenon. All prices go up. What you're doing is looking at a nominal increase and pretending it's a real increase. But if you don't even know the difference between real prices and nominal prices, you're too ignorant to have any opinion worth listening to. I mean, that's basic monetary theory there.
When you go to the specifics of inflation, it has a lot to do with the supply chain and the disruptions in the supply chain as a result of the pandemic.
No, as a result of government's stupid response to the pandemic. It didn't have to happen.
And so it's impacting certain industries much more. Also with oil, it has to do with OPEC and Saudi Arabia.
Well, funny how they'd gone back down to pre-Obama levels back in January and only started going up again with Biden's economic policies.
Robert Reich just laid it out for you. The problem is we're dealing with monopolistic companies. A lot of these companies are monopolies.
Walmart isn't a monopoly. Target and other stores compete with them. Kroger isn't a monopoly. Safeway and Publix compete with them. Colgate-Palmolive isn't a company. They have competition from Procter & Gamble and Johnson & Johnson. None of the companies you mentioned are monopolies.
And you need to break these companies up.
That will do absolutely no good whatsoever. Prices are rising because there's more money in the economy. 40% of all U.S. dollars in existence were created just this year. Any economist worth his salt, and by that I don't mean Robert Reich, will tell you that more money chasing the same amount of goods and services results in higher prices.
I mean, this is disaster capitalism 101.
It's disaster socialism 101. This is what happens when you try to have government just create money to take care of everyone. That's why countries with the highest inflation are socialist countries like Venezuela, Zimbabwe, and Argentina.
It's also astounding watching everybody not talk about inflation in an educated way.
You mean like you?
I thought, oh, okay, well, there's big spending. So the big spending, that increases the money supply, that can lead to inflation. Well, no, when I spoke to economists and experts on this who know way more than I do.
Who did you speak to? Give us names. Or better still, why don't you read what real economists have to say on the matter? This isn't anything controversial. In fact, the only people who deny it are the economic pseudoscientists and the cranks, Keynesians, socialists, and MMT morons.
In no uncertain terms, they said, it is not the stimulus bills, period.
So, your government. You run up a massive debt. The federal government went into debt $165 billion in October alone. The cumulative deficit for the 2021 fiscal year is over $2.7 trillion. All of that goes in as an expansion of credit. That's how government goes into debt. It borrows that money by doing things like selling bonds. That way increases the demand for loanable funds. What happens next? You don't even have to ask an Austrian. Any macroeconomist will do. Increasing demand increases prices. And in the loanable funds market, the price is the interest rate. So the interest rate would ordinarily rise to accommodate for it. But the Fed policy is not to let interest rates rise. If they want to hold interest rates steady, they need to increase the supply of loanable funds by the same amount. So they'd need to create $2.7 trillion and inject it into the economy as cheap credit to keep interest rates where they are. Now there's more money chasing the same amount of goods and services. That's where the inflation comes from.
It's the supply chain.
I mean, the artificial supply shock from stupid government COVID policies didn't help, but it's not the source of inflation. Inflation is caused by an expansion in the monetary base.
Everybody just assumes, it's all the big spending bills.
They don't just assume it, Kyle. We know how it happens. We have a mechanism for it. You don't. Because even if your lies about monopolies were the case, a monopoly can't just charge whatever they want, because people will just buy fewer of whatever it is. They'll look for alternatives. They'll find other ways of getting what they want.
The next big spending bill, Build Back Better, they're going to oppose it and say, it'd be crazy to do it because of inflation.
It'd be crazy to do it for a ton of reasons, but yeah, inflation is a good one.
We have never really broken free of the chains of Reaganomics and Austrian economics.
Oh, for the love of Mike.
And as a result of that, we're in hell. We're in hell. Because now the common sense position is don't raise wages because that's bad.
Have you even looked at a macroeconomics book? All right, let's talk about stickiness. That's the ease in which prices can change. Gas prices change very easily. They just punch a new number into the computer. It can happen several times a day. Now think about a restaurant. In order to raise their prices, they have to print up new menus. That costs money, and it takes time to do. So they're only going to do it when they can raise prices enough to make it worth those costs. Economists actually call that menu costs, the costs involved in raising prices. So restaurant prices are stickier than gas prices. Now think about wages. How often do people get raises? Once every year? Once every 6 months? How many people negotiate a new wage every month? Every week? Who runs into their boss's office every morning to negotiate their pay for the day? That would be ridiculous. So wages are stickier than prices. So when inflation hits, oil companies are going to do all right because their prices can change almost in an instant. Restaurants won't do as well because they lag behind. And workers lag behind the most. Wages are always trying to play catch up to inflation. That's why inflation is a tax, and the most regressive tax there is. It hits the poor and working class far harder than it hits the rich, and moreover, politicians, banks, and politically connected corporations actually benefit since they can use the new money first. So it's not, don't raise wages because that's bad, you moron. It's, wages are stickier than prices, so they're always trying to play catch up.
What MSNBC host Stephanie Ruhle said to us.
Gotta love your sources on this. So thanks for watching. Please hit like and subscribe, leave a comment, and go to donate.bogosity.tv to keep me doing what I do. And check out all the great content here, like this video selected just for you.